Welcome aboard. My name is Sharia, and you're listening to a brand new episode of the Aviation Files, the best podcast for all aviation enthusiasts. Today, we'll be talking to a brand designer in the aviation world, Edmond Huot. So, without further ado, let's begin. Now, before we start, I would like to thank our sponsors for today's episode, Lithium Containment Solutions. Lithium Containment Solutions is a pioneering company in lithium-ion battery fire containment, as well as safe charging and storage. With innovative technology, they are the best choice to equip airliners with the safest measures for lithium battery fire containment. Their product, Lithium FireGuard, is the only product currently on the market with the prestigious UL 5800 certification. They offer devices that apply universally as well as custom-made devices. They are making substantial changes not just to aviation, but maritime safety, government buildings, and even office buildings. To learn more, visit their website, lithcon.us, and check out episode 30 of the Aviation Files, where I interviewed Nick Dunbar, their VP of Sales. Once again, a big thanks to Lithium Containment Solutions. Now, let's get back to the interview. Hey Edmond, so nice to have you on the show today. Could you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and a bit about what you do?
Sure. My name is Edmond Huot. I am the Chief Creative Officer of Forward Studio, which is part of Forward Group, a brand design agency that does PR and media buying as well. My interest is in all things creative, but of course my passion is very much involving all things airliner. I'm what you would call the av geek. And our firm basically works with clients who are looking to do branding projects where they're either taking an idea and bringing it to life from scratch, or they're looking at their existing business and asking us to help them reinvent it, reimagine it. And the last, I would say, 10 years, we focused more so on travel companies, airlines, helping them from a PR perspective, media buying perspective, and branding and livery design perspective.
Cool. So, since you're in the brand designing industry, what's your favorite livery?
Well, that's a really unfair question.
Yeah, you probably have many. Yeah,
there's so many, but I would probably start by saying a lot of my inspiration came from the 50s and 60s, and even 70s when the jet age was, a real special time for this country, and some incredible designers' work gave rise to some incredible livery designs, such as Braniff International, who had a fleet of aircrafts that were adorned in the most amazing color palettes.
Yeah.
Continental, TWA, Pan American, Northwest Orient, who used a real striking approach with regards to color, graphic device, just very, very sort of sexy. And when you compare what was happening back then to today, you see sort of a commodification of the design. And so certainly a lot of my interest and passion stems from those earlier designs and liveries. So.
Yeah, cool. We're definitely going to talk more about that. So it's great that you're into that. But before we dive into your story, let's hear about what made you want to be a brand designer in the first place.
Good question. Well, it started probably with the fact that I grew up on a farm. I was basically just alone, didn't have a lot of friends. I was lived on several acres up in Canada. And so I used to have to find different ways to amuse myself. And one of the things that I would do was I'd build model airplanes, which, I think a lot of kids would do.
Yeah.
But what I would then do is I would marry sort of the building of the model airplane with this fascination I had with the storytelling, the drama of, back in the day, there were movies like Airport, based on Arthur Haley. I was obsessed with that movie. And it had all the right ingredients. It was sort of high intrigue. It was a disaster film. It featured, obviously, sexy 707 jetliners. But there was also this sort of microcosm where inside that plane, things were happening. There was dialogue and drama, and there was a story arc. And so I guess I really fell in love with all of that. And when I had this model plane that I had built, I'd go outside and wander in the fields with my little model airplane, and I would squint with one eye as I held the plane, almost as if my eye was the camera. And I would imagine my airplane starring in my own version of a movie, complete with weird dialogue that I was coming up with on the fly. So I would literally wander the fields alone for hours, imagining all these great things. And years later, I would recount with friends that I was doing this. And I remember one friend in particular said, "Do you think that was in any way maybe sort of the ground zero for you in terms of like your ability to be imaginative, your storytelling abilities?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think you're right." So
yeah,
I think
sure.
Growing up on the farm and losing myself in my imagination was sort of something that honed my skills. And so even today, I think back at those early years, and I definitely think that was sort of where it all began.
Well, that's a beautiful story. I haven't had any stories like that, but hopefully I'll have one soon. So since you grew up on a farm, and you moved to a city, how does it differ from big city life on a farm?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, as a, 8-year-old on the farm, the things that I had to keep myself busy were sort of all about like exploring animals. I mean, I had pet chickens. I was a total geek. And I was really craving people and interaction. So I went from like a very sort of quiet, solitary, isolated upbringing, surrounded by animals and farm implements, to then years later moving to a city, which was Winnipeg. So I grew up in Canada on a farm, and I moved into the city. And then from there, built a business with my business partner, Peter Clark. And then years later, moved to New York City, where now I am literally surrounded by all things, built form. So office buildings, trucks, honking horns, all of that. And I really, really miss the quiet. So when I go home to see my family, I'm always really enjoying the calm, lack of chaos.
Well, that's great. So, I grew up flying on India. Grew up flying to India on the Air India 747s a lot. And in the late 2000s, early 2010s, Air India's design was like a lot more ornate than it is now. Mm-hmm. And going even further back during Air India's golden age, like you said, like during the jet age, the designs and the wallpapers were just a whole lot more detailed and elegant than the stuff we see now. And this trend is absorbed across many airlines across the world. Yeah. So why do you think that is, and what factors contribute to that?
I think, again, back to my comment about sort of the jet age and this sort of burgeoning fascination with air travel. I really think it inspired at all levels, across all aspects of travel, the best, the brightest, and even sometimes the most sort of forward-thinking and wacky designs. I mean, the interiors for Air India, I remember seeing photos of the paneling, and it was I call it a maximal design. It was like everything was just very intense, which was a celebration of the culture, I would assume.
It was. It totally was.
Yeah, and I think we've now sort of progressed and yet sort of divested ourselves from a lot of those aspects. And now what we have are, I think, a fascination with sort of modular and futuristic and sort of a toning down of all things that are busy. And I feel like what's happened, and we could debate this, and there's different points of view, of course, but it almost feels as if you walk into a cabin now and it's just it's lost a lot of the humanity of the design. Yes, the seats are more ergonomic, but they don't even read as plush. They read as wafer thin. I mean, certainly in economy, premium economy, I've got to imagine that those seats are comfortable, but I don't think that when you're walking down the aisle and you're looking at these wafer thin seats, that you're getting this sense of like warmth and plush.
Yeah.
So I'm always at odds a little bit with sort of, how we've innovated and but how that expression has sort of failed to meet the moment when it comes to the past and our imagination of that past. I mean, people still have this view of air travel deep down in their minds as something that's going to be special, and yet innovation in some ways has sort of removed a lot of those aspects. So I think that's a challenge, and that would be an interesting brief for a project, I think, would be to say, how do we reinsert, the incongruous things that don't quite make sense, but are much more human? How do we bring that, how do we layer that into an expression or experience, whether it's an exterior design or an interior experience? How do we layer that in there? Because so much of what you've referenced has disappeared. And I fear it's the battle between the art and commerce. So, what makes an airplane more efficient in terms of space means we forsake certain things that give it charm. And so I think we can't lose sight of that. And I think when an airline does a good job of that today, people really rise up and take notice. But that's not always the case, as you point out.
Yeah. I want to ask you, the airline industry has shifted a lot from flying on an airline being an experience to just being a form of transit. And you can see that with the rise of budget carriers, that people prefer cheaper seats. They just want to get from point A to point B. Do you think that sort of mentality that's shifted from it being a luxury to just a form of transportation has contributed to this loss of design, because airlines know that their passengers are not experiencing that flight, they're just in transit? Do you think that's something that plays into this?
I definitely do. And perhaps what we could ask ourselves is, what's the criteria for the experience? Some people will argue that they just don't care, and the real experience for them is, spending as little as possible. And for those people, you have a Ryanair, which will deliver, less experience, but they're going to save money. Interestingly, how many people complain about the experience and almost regret,
I know. Yeah.
And, so it's sort of like that dwelling. And then, and in other ways, you see airlines really looking to spend a lot of money for premium passengers. I mean, that's where you see more of the innovation.
Of course, yeah.
The lounge experience, the onboard experience, and you see all kinds of interesting things happening. I would like to believe, and I would always advocate, even with our clients, that we look for ways to inject some level of experience, a nod perhaps, something that reminds people that there is a humanity to flying. And certainly airlines do have to factor in the cost, and that equation is always front and center. But, as I point out with Northern Pacific, which was an airline that we worked on in terms of their brand, I really wanted that livery to celebrate the art of flying in a way that made it feel special. So although it was a low-cost carrier and there was a lot of pressure to sort of design in accordance to a low-cost carrier, I really pushed back, and our CEO was great. He really got behind the vision, which was, no, I want the plane to read as a sexy, stylish airplane, and why should somebody who's spending less on their ticket, not be able to appreciate that? So we tried in some ways to give people things that weren't necessarily going to cost them more, but at least elevate the idea that it was a special experience. So.
Right, of course, yeah. I was reading the other day that Air New Zealand had these beds designed so that economy passengers too could sleep on the flights. And I think that brought back a little bit of this idea of experiencing your flight, and it's not just like transit, but you're doing things on that flight other than just sitting there.
Yes.
And yeah, exactly. What do you think about that?
I think it's great. And
me too.
We'd all like to fly up front, but the reality is a lot of us have to fly in the middle and the back.
Of course.
And when airlines decide to invest in these experiences for economy class passengers, it's a huge nod to people to say, you know what, you matter just as much. B, the media loves it because there's just not enough stories out there about
Yeah,
airlines
it's
doing
making
things like that.
headlines.
Making headlines, it's great PR. And, it's giving people more reasons to travel, not less. Because, flying on the long haul flight can be grueling.
Yeah.
What airline was it? I just read about this the other day, where I want to say it's Qantas that is flying the longest. I think it's a 22-hour flight. Might be the longest flight, and they have removed X number of seats in the back to give incredible pitch, like real pitch for economy class passengers. Again, when I read that, I was like, wow, like that's amazing, because they're forsaking revenue and profit for obviously people's comfort, and I would dare say for their safety, because that type of flight is, that's a lot of hours to be sitting.
Yeah.
And it could be a problem for some people. So it's just good to see airlines, and they should be doing more of it.
For
if
sure.
you want to democratize travel, let's see that happening, in economy, not just in business and first. And I think premium economy has really risen up. I think there's been a lot of innovation and attention and focus on that sort of middle zone. I wish they would do a little bit more in the back for economy as well. Yeah,
Emirates really set something in motion there when they revealed the premium economy on their A380s. I was really happy when I saw that.
Even the economy class cabins are like pretty. I mean, it's again the airline's culture is all about swish, and everything is larger than life. I mean, it's got that. But if you're going to be flying an economy on Emirates, you're going to feel special.
You're going to feel,
the optics, the cosmetic design at least makes you feel that way, even if you can't fly in the suite.
I think most of the Middle Eastern carriers sort of embody that.
Yes.
Yeah. I was, the other day I was looking at Etihad Airways, I think 20-year anniversary livery on their A321, and I was like, when there is a aircraft model of that, I am so getting it, because it's just an amazing livery.
Yeah,
I love the gold detailing.
I mean, I looked at that livery and was like, okay, that is a lot of work. First of all, the coverage of paint on that body is exceptional. But the colors, the tonal play, that was done with very, it was very carefully done. It was just elegant. Far too often you just see, the Euro white with the striping or the back part of the tail. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like what Lufthansa's done in terms of turning the dial ever so slightly to update the blue.
Yes, I love that. Yeah,
gorgeous. I mean, the design is not groundbreaking.
Yeah,
where they use the tail and it sort of sweeps under the back part of the fuselage. But in terms of just the attention to detail, which is very in keeping with a German aesthetic and a German sensibility. Yeah, love it. But going full coverage. Like, have you seen Riyadh Air's livery?
Yes, the purple one with yes, I have.
So the launch aircraft was using this very dark sort of blue gold, which again, gorgeous color. But I was thinking, how did they get away with painting that for their aircraft?
Yeah.
But turns out I think that was just meant to be the promotional.
Okay.
But the rest of the fleet was a little bit more sobered with a white, like a much lighter fuselage, and then they used the blue just for the lettering, for the letter forms. So, but again, to your point, a lot of the airlines that are coming from the Middle East, I mean, they really have celebrated the expression of their designs on these aircraft, whereas I have to say in the U.S. it's underwhelming. I mean,
it's so underwhelming.
I mean, if we can, not that I want to critique I don't want to be, but can we talk about what is going on with United Continental?
Yeah, it's
what is going on? Like, pick a side, folks. Like, if it's United, make it United. Like, I've never understood that livery, and then I don't even really love the use of the blue and the white. It just feels very flat. It's like, there's United, the logo type, there's the striping, and then American, I feel like they've fallen short as well. It's like I really like the reinterpretation of the icon of the eagle with the tail, but I really don't understand the tail of the aircraft with that really garish flag. It just feels very aggressive.
It does.
And then I've always loved, the very thing about American that I've always loved is the sheer, like the glistening steel of the aircraft, the exposed steel,
the chrome,
right? The brute power of that, the luxury liner. I mean, that was their line. The luxury liner is like, oh man. And then they, what they've done now is come up with something very matte, very flat. And I don't know. So again, that's a subjective comment, but it's looking at the past and asking, how are they moving it forward carefully? And when I see designs that throw the baby out with the bathwater, I scratch my head. I'm a fan of where somebody is like, let me be really studied in the past. Let me have a clear vision of the future. And then let's get a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. And let's do some real beautiful work here and see if we can update, modernize, surprise with something that is elegant yet bold. And, that's probably why I love the business so much, because when you get to work on the type of canvas that is a 757 or better yet, an A350,
right.
So sexy. I mean,
of course.
I could talk for hours about this, I usually do. So, very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, last year Air India released their new branding, and I thought it was great that they're sort of reverting back to that colorful scheme that celebrates Indian culture, and I think that was great. So yeah, what do you think about Air India's new?
I'm just looking. I'm quickly Air India because I feel like what I saw I didn't really like.
Originally, I didn't like it either. I preferred the sun and I preferred the current livery they had. I've grown on. I've come to grow and like it because I've seen more of the interior and their A350, and I gotta say, as an Indian, it connects closer to my culture than the sun. Yeah.
Okay, let me. What I don't like. I don't like the. I like the use of the colors, the red, the gold. I'm not a big fan of the logo type across the fuselage. I feel like it's just, and again, you see this all the time, but just so
it's
large.
A little basic.
It's a bit basic. It's just sort of not that it can't be big. I don't know. And then the tail art, maybe I need more time on that. But I was also looking at the previous, and I was like, oh, I missed, what I really loved, and I know they can't do this, I guess, is I loved how they had every window had a little
I know, that was great, and on a 747, there's just so many windows, and they all have that little, it was great,
And the repetition and how you would, anybody who sees a jet on the tarmac, when the plane pivots, those windows,
light up.
There's a visual dynamic in terms of the repetition of those windows. So there's an element there that I think is rife for doing something with it, subtle. But I just feel like they just abandoned it. Little things that everyone used to recognize the airline for weren't necessarily brought forward in a new and surprising way. It was just okay, that's gone. So I think that's my general critique, but I would love to dig into that one more because, and I think the interiors are nice, are quite nice actually. I think I saw the photos, it's okay, I like the interior, but the livery I was a little I don't know. So.
Yeah, with the livery, I agree with you. The window thing was a great thing from their previous livery. I like to describe them as uniform yet unique because there was very few others doing that. But the uniformity between them was amazing and a sight to see. But at the same time, I would have liked if in the new livery they used that gold sort of frame that they're currently using and sort of incorporated that on the windows. That's something I would like to see them add. But we'll see how that livery evolves over time.
I'm just looking at and their premium cabin is nice. I'm a big fan of, so in terms of cabin interiors, I I tend to go for darker, warmer colors, and a lot of airlines tend to go, well, I've seen a lot of airlines where they go with sort of a light and bright effect. But I'm a big fan of evening flights, and so the drama and the I don't know, when the lights go down, I like the idea of like a cozy interior. And in the daytime, when the interior is all white, it just feels too sterile for me. So I'm always looking for ways for airlines to bring in sort of natural elements, whether it's wood tones or colors. Like Air Canada did a great job, I think, with using sort of a charcoal for their seats, and the seats are a little, they seem a little austere. But that again is part of the trend. You see it a lot with a lot of the seating. They're not doing as much of the sort of the shaped seats. They're very sort of flat. I think ANA has some really flat seats in their premium cabin, and it was like, okay, is that comfortable? I don't know. I mean, it must be, but yeah. So I don't know, but the photos are quite nice. So
yeah. And Croatia Airlines also recently announced their rebranding too, right? I didn't get a chance to look into that, but if you want to share some thoughts, go for it.
Croatia Airlines, is this where they have the dot pattern on the tail?
Yeah.
Yeah, like my issue on this one would be that I feel like the letter forms are too light, like they get lost. They're too thin. And then I feel like the motifs with the squares, I would have perhaps explored having them sit on a color so that what you don't have is sort of a confusion visually of the windows.
Yeah.
Suddenly of the squares, and they're all sort of spaced. I feel like there's no center point. There's color should be being used to create a point of reference. Either the back has it and the front is light, but in here it's just the underbelly of the aircraft, which I guess flying overhead maybe gives you something special. I think another thing I notice about these rebrands is that often airlines will go with like a light, bright livery as an expression of we're cleaning the slate, and we're lighter and brighter and fresh, and these are all attributes that play nicely into a rebrand and a new launch.
Right.
So in some ways, I do get that, and also economically, I think it's better to not have dark colors, because dark colors can create problems for friction and heat, which can create, I think, issues with drag. So an all-black plane or using dark colors, it's bold and it may not necessarily have the economic justification. So I can sort of understand why they do the light planes, but I just wish they would have done a slightly thicker type for Croatia. And maybe they could have reconciled the tail art in a way that didn't sort of compete with the windows.
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like everything sort of got lost in that new livery. It's just it feels like grains of salt on a table, sort of those squares.
Yeah. Another thing that I really like, and it's sort of a bias, which I want to get your thoughts on, is that if you look at the livery for North Pacific, I attempted to create a mask, like a raccoon mask over the cockpit windows, because I'm obsessed with, and I think A350s have them, where they have a black mask around the front cockpit window. And back in the early days, a lot of the airlines had that. They had black markings around the front window, and I've always loved that. And when I was coming up with the design for North Pacific, I actually had a whole series of different versions. Like I had one called Raccoon, one called Eyeliner, where it was just a little bit of black on the corner part of the side cockpit window. I had another one called the Hood, and it was a black.
Yeah, I'm looking at the hood and the bandit mask right now.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I was pitching, of course, can we do versions? And they're like, no, we don't have the money to do that. I'm like, okay. But it was just in our conversation for tonight, it's to make the point that I'm a big fan of when the airlines do something special with the cockpit window using black. But the 757, you can't really paint the steel around the windows, and we tried, and they're like, yeah, no, the paint won't stay. So
I see.
Unfortunately, my mock-ups don't really match up to the actual finished product, which is sort of a little bit of a confession. Like, didn't really work. But in the mock-ups, of course, I was able to sort of parlay that idea, and then it's like, no, it didn't really work in the painting facility. We tried, but yeah, so.
Yeah, I mean, well, my thoughts on it, I'm looking at the chin strap, the cat eye, the hood, and the bandit mask side by side right now.
Yeah.
And I will say the cat eye, I'm not a big fan of that little triangle on the side, but I can see where that comes from, and I can see how some people would like it.
Yeah.
It's just a little too angular for me.
Right.
But the chin strap, I love the chin strap. I like how it's like like the two sections of it are slightly off a little bit, and I like how that translates to the windows. And the bandit mask and the hood, I think they're like new ideas, and I think it's refreshing compared to what we see. As for the N around Northern Pacific, I like that. It's a great touch. So you don't see many airlines doing that, where they have like a letter behind their normal typing. So
you know who did it, and you know where that came from?
Yeah,
was Scandinavian.
Oh, that's
SAS,
true. Yeah,
SAS, whose livery is so beautiful. I mean, gorgeous livery. So back to your comments about the front options, I would agree with all of what you said. I mean, the eyeliner was probably my least favorite. It was sort of like, okay, we guess throw that one in there. I love the chin strap because when you looked at the plane head on, it was a smile.
It was. Oh, I can see that. Yeah.
And so I was like, it's funny. I got so excited about this, and our team, of course, we were like loving it. And then you bring it to the client, and it's interesting. Like, they liked it, but they don't get excited. They just are like, oh, okay. But look at when you see it this way. And I think that's something about livery design that's important, is that you really have to understand and love the dimensionality of the aircraft fuselage. You have to really understand it so that different angles will reveal different aspects of the livery, as opposed to just slapping, lettering on the plane and,
the design on the tail.
Yeah, it's all these little things that I think really do matter. And it's little things that people sort of discover after the fact that I was also trying to accomplish, whether it was a little marking on the engine or, naming the aircraft. One thing I will admit, though, also with the North Pacific, is that they didn't get the lettering quite right. They didn't paint. They didn't go as thick as they needed to. Mm-hmm. So again, in the mock-ups, I was very happy with that. But then when they went to paint the plane, the lettering was just a little too thin. And again, when I brought that up with the client, they were like, we don't think it's a problem. And I'm like, it is. But they're like, well, we need an extra cost.
Yeah, it's painted already.
Yeah, it's painted already. And I'm like, but, again, live and learn.
Right.
Plenty of things to, that I would look at and maybe I would want to do differently. But overall, I was very happy with it. So.
Well, as someone who doesn't know as much as you do, as an average customer, I think it looks great. So,
thank you.
Good job. I think it looks great. So, yeah, no, you definitely did a great job with Northern Pacific. But you brought up about like engine detailings, and I will say that's one of the things I love when airlines have like a detail on the engine. I keep coming back to Air India on their like the old livery, not the new one. They had like that little sun design on the engines too. And it was amazing. I loved it. And I liked and SAS, they had their red engines for a while.
Yes.
It was, yeah.
I'm just looking at the old versus the new. Oh, yeah, that's right. They had, very cool. Like, the original one didn't, but then the middles, they have different permutations. And the slightly newer version had... but then look what they've done now. It's just like wah wah. And a little bit like guys. Like the sun, that motif is so amazing.
It was so powerful in that livery. It was like everywhere. It was there. It was a statement.
Yeah, and I liked how they obviously looked at the original sort of angular, motif, and then they were like, okay, well, let's build on that, let's play with that, and then, but the newest version doesn't seem to have any of that evidence in it. I mean, it sort of just really goes in a different direction.
Yeah, I see that.
So I kind of, it's a beautiful aircraft, obviously, but I am now looking at the engines. Right, the sun graphic is a cool, but the application is quite interesting. Yes.
And actually, what you were saying about how like when you move around the aircraft and like it's really a 3D design rather than just a 2D design. Like with that sun design on the engines, as you would like pass by it, those spikes on the sun would get longer when you like rotated the aircraft, and that gave the image of like a rising sun. And I think that was like, I don't know if they intended that, they might have, but it was a great touch, I think.
That's super cool. I love those little stories. I mean, because then I tell those stories then to my clients. So I always like little factoids like that. And to your point, I don't think enough people pay attention, and yet when you make note of it, they're like, oh, that's cool. Like, yeah, this is the story that needs to be told, and we are the people that need to do it, because the traveling public is just like, they're just there to receive and to feel it. And if nobody's putting that level of curious design into the work, you end up with something that just feels, a bit cold. So
I like to say that this is sort of a hypocrisy we've built ourselves, that like we wanted cheaper flights, we wanted just a form of transit, we wanted everyone to fly, not just the rich, and now we're dealing with the consequences of that, and we complain about it. But we are sort of, hopefully we do something about it soon, and we, go back to that elegant era of aviation.
I think it's possible. I feel like one of my jobs as a creative and as somebody who is passionate about air design is that I need to be thinking about the next generation, the next big calling. I need to be able to articulate that more. I need to talk about it, not just, with friends and colleagues, but I need to give my next clients a story about where things could go and a glimpse of what that could look like. Because we definitely came out of an era of all things fascination with air travel, jet age, romance. And then to your point, we've gone through this whole deregulation, which, is sort of a sad statement in my opinion, because air travel is one of those things that, you need it. It's something that I think governments are sort of uniquely sort of set up to handle / subsidize. Obviously, it's a debatable topic, but I feel like what has happened now is that a lot of airlines, they're cannibalized and basically monopolized. And what they're doing now in some cases is just really they're not necessarily standing up for the love of flying or for, you know what I mean? It's becoming a profit and loss game. And so, how do we make that? How do we help that out? I don't know. But just from a creative point of view, I think there's definitely a story to be told and work to be done. And I feel like that's definitely going to be part of my calling moving forward, is to talk about what the next sort of big moment in travel looks like. And maybe it has to do with things like eVTOL and, sort of where aircraft and travel is going. And maybe it's sub-regional travel. It's not all long haul. It's people going from point to point on aircrafts that look like insects. That's kind of a cool whole space that's sort of growing in popularity. And I don't know, maybe that's part of the story.
I love what ANA does with their like Pokemon liveries or different, Japanese media and stuff, like the Star Wars like all of that. I think they do a great job with that. But okay, before we get into the future of where design is going, that's something I want to talk to you about. There's a couple liveries I like and I want to ask you about. So what do you think about the general China Southern livery? I think their blues are amazing, but I want to hear your thoughts on it.
Okay, hold on. Okay, what is it? China Southern?
Yep.
Okay, this has got, I think I'm looking at the correct one. I like the blue. It's a very refreshing. It pops, that blue on the tail, correct?
Yes, it's blue with that red, and then there's like the blue stripe in the middle.
And then the striping is sort of interrupted by the doors of the aircraft, but then there's a general central striping. Is that the one?
Yeah.
I think it is. Let me look closely here. Well, one thing I find interesting about this livery, which I've been talking to friends about, is I want to bring back the stripe. You know, the old fashioned stripe. But I want to do it in a new way. And I've been trying to figure out, like, how do you do it? Like, because, you know, just doing the stripe is like a bit boring. And yet it's something that all the airlines used to have. I mean, Pan American had started with the striping. It was, you know, American. They all did it.
Yeah, everyone had it.
And now we have, of course, the Euro white. So there's, you know, none of that. And now you're showing me a livery where they're doing it. I mean, I don't like the interruption, but the blockiness is interesting. I mean, Northwest Orient did a version of color blocking, not like this, but it reminds me of sort of a very sort of much more sort of austere, severe graphic solution. I like the color combination of that dark blue and the light blue on the white. It looks very fresh.
It does,
And then you have, there's basically like three different, there's the tail blue, then there's these, I wonder if that secondary blue of, you know, the striping, there's these two blues. Is that the same blue? Maybe it is. I think it is actually. So it's basically that light blue and then a darker blue.
Yeah, and then there's like that gold or orange in the middle separating two.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't mind it. I mean, and then also very interesting to look at is just the logo type using the Chinese inscription, which you know is just visually is like, okay, that's just not part of my visual world. But it's interesting to see how they've done that, where they've combined it with English lettering. So
I don't mean to interrupt, but I love when airlines like incorporate their country's lettering. I keep going back to Air India, but I think it's such a great example. Air India used to have in Hindi written Air India, and then on the other side it would say in English Air India. So it wasn't like on the same side; it'd be like a flip, right? And I just love that. And I don't think enough airlines are doing that. But
no, you're right. And I think like airlines are, I mean, people use the term billboards. I hate the term, but I understand why people say it. But these are expressions of cultural significance. The markings, everything from the language, use of language, to various symbols and shapes that have deep meaning. These are meant to be exported to the world and to excite people. So when airlines are bold enough to use their native lettering language, I think it's super important because it speaks to the bigger idea or calling, right? It's not like, as opposed to things getting smaller and becoming more sort of commodified, everyone should be a little different, and different countries should represent in accordance to their culture. So I agree with you on that for sure.
I think airplanes and aviation bring together countries, and I think that should be celebrated in our liveries.
Yes. I mean, for sure. Like the balance is what responsibility does the airline have if it's representing, a geographic body, a culture.
Right.
So there's that part. This is always what I have to deal with, which is like before we even get creative on the design, there's a lot of work that goes into understanding cultural significance. Because, imagine painting a plane that's, $50 million to $100 million And no one really took time to figure out that, oh, a raven is actually a symbol of like death in Asia. Like, why do they put that? Well, the designer thought it was cool. It's like, really? Now,
Yeah.
now you have that. Like, these mistakes do happen, and it's part of what I love about the job is that a lot of the job is about doing research and understanding people, culture, history, politics. So you do a deep dive on that, and then you marry that with some type of big idea, creative expression. So usually we do like these big mood boards, and every mood board is a story, and every story can and should connect back to brief. And the brief is where, you sort of map out sort of the guardrails. So, culturally, we can't go down this path. These colors are off limits because these certain colors have certain meanings. So it's really quite studied. You have to be really sort of focused. But once you have it sort of in place, it becomes really exciting to then get sort of imaginative and to your point, sort of how do we take this story and share it with the world? Like, how do we get big with our thinking? And how abstract can we be? Because once you go really big, if it's a great idea, you can always bring it, you can always contextualize it. You can always edit things down into manageable pieces. But if you don't give yourself a chance to sort of, leap off, if you don't give yourself enough runway, so to speak, to really figure out what ideas can fly, using a lot of airline puns here, but honestly, like, that is, I think, the most important part of the job is to make sure that in the studio you're creating the right environment for heads down work, but then also the ability to then be really artistic, imaginative, celebrate the craft, and then if you're really, really lucky and it all comes together and you get the perfect renderer, you can then take that design and apply it onto something that then brings it to life. The clients, their eyes light up, and when you hit it in the right way, you grab their heart. You feel they're just like, oh my God, and then that ownership. Once they feel ownership, you can do no wrong after that. With that, that work is solid. But if you miss the mark, oh my God, then it's because what happens is you get just you don't get a lot of comments. You get questions, you get more questions. You lose momentum.
Right.
Then you get the odd cough. It gets awkward, and you're like, oh God. So then you have to go back to the drawing board, and the problem is you only get so many things at that can, and then and so that is as a business owner, I'm very cognitive of like politics of decision making and getting to yes. The artist in me is like, once I'm in my zone, wow, I'm loving it. But, it's like you have to balance a lot of factors. But again, getting back to what you said in terms of like, airlines taking this message out to the world, I mean, that is not to be taken lightly. And it's my job to bring that idea, like really elevate that idea to our clients, who often really are more, they're more like operators.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not really dealing with like a mainline carrier who has a fully institutionalized, departments that are all, marketing people and savvy this. I'm dealing with an investor, an investment group, or a bunch of pilots. Like, these are really, they're money people, they're operators, they're all about, fuel, the cost of the
usage.
And they're just not coming to the table ready to be excited about something that they should be. And that's kind of like part of the job is to help them, to lead them down that path in a way where they're like, okay, I'm really getting this. Like, I'm really loving it. Because again, to the point you're making, when that plane rolls out of the factory and onto the tarmac, listening and looking, it's really sort of taking that show on the road for all types of people, and so it's a higher calling. It's a really important aspect.
Yeah, no, and like you said, pilots and operators, actually the word operators is great for this. They're not seeing that aircraft from the outside a lot. Pilots are sitting in the aircraft, they're worried about the controls. Investors are worried about the money, they see the bank account.
Yes.
But it's the passengers that see the aircraft, and I think we need someone to tell these operators that, hey, you need to look at it from the passenger's perspective too.
Absolutely.
And give them that experience.
Absolutely.
So,
and the employees too.
Yeah,
flight
for sure.
attendants, flight attendant, like there's nothing like giving a flight crew a great uniform.
That's what I was going to say. Flight attendants embody that sort of brand designing, and like I keep coming back to Air India, but they have always focused on traditional.
Are you being paid by Air India? I just want to get this clear.
No, I am not. I am not. They're a very close airline to my heart, and I've seen a lot of them, so I can speak a lot about them.
I love it. I'm learning a little bit. Also, I'm getting a little education on Air India, so I'm loving all of your factoids on it.
If you get a chance, you should really check out like their cultural uniforms that they had for flight attendants. They focus on like they don't go for just like the normal flight attendant outfit. They like will give them Indian saris, and they'll make them look representative of the country that airline is flying for, and I think that's great. And another airline that does that really well is Thai Airways. Now I haven't fully seen it, but I want to add, I love their livery and how they're inside of the cabin. They have like the red seats and the purple seats. So if you could just, leave some comments about Thai Airways, and actually had a specific question. When you see Thai Airways livery like adapted to their A380s, I think, hot take, but I think they did it better on the A380s than on their single deck aircraft. But what do you think about that?
Okay, so A380 Thai, which I flew Thai a long time ago. Oh yeah, here we go. I like it. The striping, it's nicely balanced. The A380 is a difficult plane, in my opinion, to make look good. I'm a fierce. I'm team 747.
Me too. So, I have an entire level of my like airplane model collection that's just dedicated to the 747.
I get, but I am team Airbus when it comes to like a company. And
yeah, for sure.
Like, I'm sorry, like what's going on with Boeing right now is despicable.
Unfortunate.
It's unfortunate, and it speaks to a lot of problems in sort of overall sort of American capitalism. Like, I don't know, I don't get it, because Boeing used to be sort of like the standard bearer for innovation and all things glorious flight. And I think one thought on that was when they merged with McDonnell Douglas
in 1995.
McDonnell Douglas's culture was very bean countery, and
we saw that with the MD-11. Like it was a DC-10. It was a disaster.
DC-10 was a disaster. I was always like, again, the VHS Betamax. I was all L-1011. I was not DC-10.
I love the L-1011.
Did you love the cabin?
Yes.
Did you love the space age sort of like? I know the overhead bins were
the S tubes on the L-1011 and the 727 on the back. Like that was a great touch for me. I preferred that over the DC-10 MD-11 tile.
Absolutely. But what's going on with Airbus now with the A350? Like, these are beautiful aircraft.
They are.
But the A380. Okay, I get it. It's double-decker. You've got your double-decker. I always knew it was never going to be a really easy plane to have in terms of its size, the difficulty it would have at airports. Like, it was a real commitment for everybody. And although it's a thing to fly on it, it's a big aircraft. I always found that the aircraft was difficult with regards to liveries because
you have to expand your livery for it.
Yeah, like not to say that I haven't seen good liveries on an A380, and I think the Thai livery is nice enough. I would like to see, like, if they gave me the assignment, I would like to take the core mark and refine it, not change it, but just refine it a little bit. Their uniforms are incredible. The airline's reputation for service is like second to none. Talk about protocols. Talk about like the efficiency at which, and this goes for most of the Asian carriers. It's not a warm experience. Not to say that it's not friendly, but it's very, very efficient. It's a quiet efficiency. flight attendants sort of are invisible, but they're there. American, it's warm, it's how are you doing? It's Hawaiian, it's they actually put their hand on your shoulder. Like, how are you? Like, there's touch involved. It's crazy, and it works for Hawaiian. I used to fly the JFK Honolulu route for a project we did in Hawaii, and I was flying first, and the flight attendants got to know me, got to know the passenger, and that was part of their training. Was they would very lightly tap you on the shoulder and say, "How are you?" And in today's world, that's sort of a bold move considering how people are. So, but to the point of like how airlines handle interacting with passengers, there's different cultural approaches. And so I'm in Thai. I haven't been on that airline for a long time, but I remember being really impressed with just how efficient, and they were very friendly as well, but very, very discreet, like such a beautiful experience.
Yeah, no, beautiful experience, beautiful uniforms, beautiful livery. Everything about it is just like, I love it. I love Thai. I've never flown on it, but from pictures I've seen, hopefully one day I get to fly on it.
What do you think about Air France La Première? Talk about, like, probably hands down my favorite first class cabin.
Really?
Yeah.
Let's see. Hold up.
Talk about, first of all, Air France. Talk about,
wow.
They know how to work a motif.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they know how to reach back into the past and extract and manipulate and reimagine sort of marks and colors. Like, the French are probably, in my opinion, like, hands down, some of the most, like, they've just delivered some of the most stylish designs. I mean, the Normandy as an ocean liner, the most glamorous ship ever built, in my opinion. And Air France's product, even today, I'm impressed. I mean, the equipment they use, the livery, the updated livery, I really like it. And then just the cabin for first class. I mean, it's a small cabin. They use little curtains as opposed to, like, a lot of the airlines, they use, the suites are these sliding doors. Yeah,
the doors, the walls. Makes you feel separated from everyone else.
Yeah, and I flew Delta One. I liked it. It was kind of cool. But when I see how they've handled the color palette and the little lamp that sits on it's just like, oh man. And then don't even get me started on how the protocols for the in-flight service. Like, just, it's the choreography. And I mean, why can't they do more of that? Obviously, I know why they don't do that in economy.
Yeah.
But, do they have to just throw a box at you?
Exactly, yeah.
Like, can't there be something small and fast that allows them to remind the 300 people in the back or the 250 people in the back that something special is coming? Like, to me, that would be an exciting part of the job, is to figure out where those moments of surprise should be. Because Lord knows up front, there's plenty of great, moments.
Yeah.
So yeah, but anyways, yeah. So
actually, I like that you brought up that. I think if you do it right, it could be a great PR move to, like, give the economy a taste of, like, the premier, the premium, and hopefully if they can, they'd be enticed to one day fly on that. And I think it'd be a good PR move if airlines could execute it correctly. You know what I'm saying?
You know what the airlines do now is they make you walk through it.
Yeah, but it feels like a walk of shame sometimes because you can't afford it. But you got to see it. You're forced.
Well, I've flown in the front, the middle, and the back. When I'm in the front, there is definitely this awkwardness, which I'm not going to lie, there's moments where I'm like, I'm up front, but you don't want to make eye contact with people because they're all giving you the glare. They're all giving you side eye. Like, I get it, so I get why the airlines do that, but I wish they could do something different that isn't shame based. That is like more aspirational. And I'm sure there are things that airlines are doing, that reflect that sensibility. Yeah, and I think a big topic should be more and more like, what's going on in the back? Like, how are we improving and elevating that experience? because I'm just tired. I mean, I'm not tired, but I just feel like there's been so much attention paid to first class and business class. And your reference to not Scandinavian. What was the airline that you were mentioning who had the lie flats in economy?
I think you were mentioning Qantas.
Qantas had they removed X number of rows to create more pitch.
Yeah.
And then there was an airline that actually creates you take the 3 seats and you can use them as beds. That's an idea that in the back.
Oh, Air New Zealand.
Air New Zealand, thank you.
Right, yes.
That is a great example. Like, we need to do more of that. So, I don't know. I mean, it's... sometimes I wish I could work for an airline. Like, I'd love to be like a product manager or a...
Yeah.
But, it's not my world, so I don't know.
All right, last livery I want to get your opinion on before we move to the future. So ANA's flying Honu A380s. I'm sure you've seen them somewhere. I think they look amazing. There's I haven't seen one in person, but yes. I'm really fascinated by just the design choices and the amount of detail they put in it. It's not a general turtle. It has the water ripples on it and everything, and the shell and everything.
I do like this, and it's funny. So when you were mentioning promotional liveries and saying how much you like them, I was going to say yes, except I've seen a lot of graphic vomit on some of them. Yeah. Even in the promotional space, care needs to be taken. There needs to be an element of intention. And I've seen so many where, because it's promotional, somehow they either just let people go crazy, and it's like, okay, that's like a dog's breakfast. I don't know what you're trying to communicate. But then you see the Star Wars, Pokemon, and of course the A380 with the is it a turtle?
Yeah, it's a turtle.
Super amazing, very well executed in terms of scale. It's you can see there's an idea there, and again it's reconciling a double-decker aircraft type like the A380. So that's not so easy to do.
It isn't, yeah.
No, you know who else did a really good? No, I can't think of the name of it. I just saw it 6 months ago. Was it Alaska Airlines? It would promotional. Let's see here. Livery. One of them did a really good job. Here
is it?
It's special. They did a 737 MAX, and it's using all of the motifs from the Inuit.
Yeah.
And it's a lot, but I love the colors. I love the dark blue. I mean, it's sort of back to your sort of the China Airlines livery, where the light blue, dark blue, and then these really sort of fantastical shapes that are very much in keeping with the type of, I'm not sure if it's Algonquin or Inuit or Iroquois, but that sort of art on the plane I thought was just super gorgeous. I loved it. And it photographs really nicely too. Some of the promotional photos were quite nice.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, so
I'm actually looking at Alaska Airlines, other promo liveries, and it reminded me of something that I don't like about promo liveries, and I want to hear what you have to say. But I hate it when airlines will just put a gradient on their aircraft and call it a day. Like when KLM did their orange Pride livery.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And the orange and blue are they're not even close colors. That gradient didn't work. There's nothing in the middle. Yeah, go for it.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm completely agreeing with that. First of all, gradients to me can be done really nicely. I'm a big fan of the gradient. Sure. Again, SAS did actually an entire gradient on the fuselage, which I have to wonder how the hell did they do that? Because in my limited experience with the painting of the aircraft, you can either spray it or you create a mechanical, a dot pattern. And I don't know how you reproduce X number of aircraft in a fleet spraying a gradient and keeping the accuracy of the gradation. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, me neither.
So I was like, how did they do that? But that livery didn't last long, probably for that reason. But for a while, they had a full gradient on the fuselage, which was ambitious. But yeah, the KLM promo livery. I mean, I don't get KLM either. Like that
really
bothered me. Yeah, I don't. Like, first of all,
I love KLM's blue.
Oh God, I can't get up behind that. It's a hard blue for me to get behind. First of all, it's a very unique blue, and from a brand perspective, own it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's their blue, unmistakably. It's just a difficult blue for me. It doesn't play well with other colors. It's a hard blue. But then even inside the aircraft, there's little things I don't like about.
The inside's not the best.
It's not the best. It's like, I don't know. And then the glassware is a little bit like, it's all special. Like up front, I'm talking about some of the glassware is sort of like, has this sort of like rugged kind of like ice kind of, I don't know. Like it's just maybe not my style, not my style frequency that I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. But to your point about the orange and the blue, I definitely didn't get that.
Hey everyone, that's where we'll cut off for part 1 of this conversation. If you've liked it so far, there's a lot more where that came from, so stay tuned as I'll be releasing part 2 tomorrow. That's all for today. Thank you so much for listening, and make sure to support the Aviation Files however you can. And don't forget to check out my Insta at the Aviation Files for more fun and exciting aviation news. Until next time.